Let's do it.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you along. Traffic wasn't so busy this morning, was it? Because it's fall break, and a lot of people are gone. But I can't believe you have fall break. You got summer break, then you got fall break, you got holiday break. Oh, no, it's not called holiday break. It's called winter break. We call it Christmas break. It's I know, they just got back into school. Christmas break. That's the voice of Douglas Carswell. You'll hear from him in just a couple minutes here. He's the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, and lots of things to talk about, including fallout from the Charlie Kirk, and it fits right in with some things that they're doing at the organization. But anyway, just a couple of thoughts. First of all, I was coming down Spillway Road and I saw a deuce. I think it was a deuce going down the street, big black. You know, that's the question of the day. What's a deuce?
You got me. I was thinking like World War II transport truck.
No,
the double deuce.
No, this is a single deuce. This is a Detroit thing, and so.
Maybe, you're talking about
it's a car.
Yeah.
It's made by, as we would say up there, Bjork. It's a Bjork 2 1/4. Anyway, so I'm thinking maybe the guy's going down to cruising. So Gerard's on his way down, right? If he's
I've seen several
there.
classics. I saw several coming back from the Renaissance. Eurofest that Mike Marsh did. Yes. I saw a couple of those the other evening, Sunday evening, that was coming back from the Delta, and they were all packing up and coming in. And there was a beautiful Euro cars in there. So I can imagine the ones getting trucked down to the cruising the coast.
I've been to that. One of the ones that also to look for, if Gerard's looking at cars, look for the deuce. It's black. I don't know if it's a deuce or not. It just looks like what I think that they used to look like. Anyway, Phil Bryant had a car that he loved very much. It was his baby. Do you know about that one? And he used to take it down there as a turquoise station wagon of some 60s vintage, I guess it was. I don't know. He just loved that car. So he may be going down there. One time when Bert and I went down there, we kept passing this Duesenberg along Highway 49. God, it was beautiful. I mean, I can't imagine, I'm going to go to Kroger's in my Duesenberg. But anyway, that's really very cool. All right, that's item number one. Item number two, Phil Bryant. And item number two is, by the way, there was a big thing about mayors last night. They had a big convo at someplace last night, mayors from around the area. But our mayor, John Horhn, is going to have his State of the City address at 5:30 Thursday. That's 2 days from now, and it's going to be on the third floor of the third floor auditorium at the Jackson complex downtown. So you can see that if you'd like to. There's a guy who's got a lot of stuff to say, I'm quite sure. And so does Douglas Carswell, jumping out of your skin, aren't you, to get going on things?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what the new mayor's got to say.
I know.
I think, the city is moving in the right direction, but I think lots of goodwill towards him. Let's see what he comes up with.
And he knows what he has to do. He knows it's monumental. I mean, that's just all there's to it. It's like, but again, he knew that. He knew the problems because he's from here. Yep. And he's been in the legislature.
Everyone is willing for him to succeed.
Absolutely.
And we've seen cities like across the border in Alabama. We've seen, Birmingham recovering. We've seen cities that were in the state that Jackson has been improving, so it can be done.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of goodwill.
I always say, even Detroit is coming back, and that city it's roughly 1,000 times bigger than here. And if they can do it, so can it be done here. Yep. And it won't be overnight. Understand that.
But you already see in Jackson. I mean, just the other day, I was in Fondren having lunch, and there's development and investment in bits of Jackson. I think if you fix the basics, if you fix crime, if you fix the water supply. Things are so cheap in Jackson, I think it'll draw in investment and start to take off.
Which would be wonderful. You want people to say, oh, Jackson, instead of, oh, Jackson. Yeah. And it could be all those things if it's done right. And people have to understand, first of all, it doesn't take it overnight. You have to take some time to do it. But don't lose your momentum. I say for public officials but for the citizens, they have to feel that you out there, Mary Wieden You.
I play tennis at the public courts at Palm Bridges, and the inward investment, the investment that's gone into that in the past few months is wonderful. And you see a park that was dilapidated coming back, and you see people using it. It's a great success story. And
you also had 4,000 tires, thrown back there at the back of it, garbage everywhere. So Lot Ward was the stimulating piece of getting Palm Bridges some love that it desperately needs, because it's been a mecca for folks for generations.
But I knew that it was good.
Especially tennis folks.
Yeah.
Oh, it had gotten rough, bud.
But it's on the way back. And I think what's happened to Palm Bridges is a metaphor for the rest of Jackson. It can be brought back. You can recover what we've lost.
So how good are you at tennis?
Not very good. I play with a great deal of enthusiasm. The problem is the net is always too high.
I like the kind where it's on the street and there's no net. And I think that's the good kind.
I get really mad at playing tennis, and
singles or doubles?
I try and play both. I was playing doubles yesterday. I like playing singles. The thing I like about singles is there's no one to blame. It's all on you. You can only blame
if
yourself.
you're John McEnroe, he would argue differently.
Well, I'm not nowhere near McEnroe's standards, but I have had one or two McEnroe-type tantrums. It has to be said.
You're not a real athlete unless you throw a McEnroe tantrum here and there, I promise you.
Well, and one thing nice about here, you can play year-round. You don't have to wait for the summer.
Yeah. And the lovely thing at Palm Bridge is you've now got these wonderful pickleball courts. I don't play pickleball myself, but they've converted a couple of tennis courts into pickleball, and there's a constant stream of people using Palm Bridge.
And orthopedists love that. That's the best friend of an orthopedist is a pickleball court.
Well, I've been invited to play pickleball, but I'm not going to because I don't do tennis well. In my way of playing tennis, if the ball is coming this way to my right, I would not hit it. I would go out of my way to go to the other side and hit it backhand, and that's not right. That's very wrong. Yeah. So,
but one of the wonderful things about Jackson is the tennis facilities. You've got places like Palm Bridges, just lot of
Flowwood is absolutely invested in it. Ridgeland has great courts. You got Palm Bridges, and coming from a place like Oxford, where I lived 21 years, huge mecca for tennis.
And the team who run Palm Bridges, they've got this wonderful drills every evening. So if, like me, you need lots of practice, you can go along and take part in tennis drills at Palm Bridges. It costs like $20 or something, and it's super fun. Drills. It's like cardio. It's cardio tennis. It's such good fun.
Well, that sounds good. Well, the city's got a long way to go, but like you say, that's a really good sign. I didn't know about that. I didn't know it had fallen into such disrepair because I just don't play tennis. But that's so good, and it can happen. But again, I don't want people to get fed up and go, "Whoa, it didn't happen, last week." Well, no, it's not going to happen last week or this week, but it's going to happen. It's coming along. I mean, the guys got to do inches here and there, and there, and it will happen. I understand that there's some good things happening in the streets too, by street repairs. Oh, and we had Robert Graham on Friday, the president of the Hinds County Board of Supervisors, and they are helping Jackson with some streets too, because that's we have to have the supervisors' input, and we pay taxes to them, and they're paying back the city, and that's good. And it also happens that Robert Graham, I think, is from Jackson, the president of the supervisors. But anyway, so economically and reputationally, that's what we were looking for, to feel, I
mean, bear in mind, last year, Mississippi had the second largest increase in household income of any state in America, 6%. Now, some people might not feel that, but the average household in Mississippi is significantly richer than they were a year ago. And I think Jackson feels that.
Good.
There's still a lot of problems, still a lot of things, but the growth is there. There's been more economic growth in Mississippi in the past 5 years than the previous 15. That you feel that in Jackson now.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I only feel it the opposite. I mean, everywhere I go, every place I shop, every organization, everything up. I don't see where's this big. I was counting on things going down. I was counting on Mr. Trump making me some money, but he hadn't made me any money yet. Of course, maybe I'm being impatient. It's only been 9 months, but I need him to make me some money because I have some things I need to acquire. Like a horse. That's what I need to do. My plan was to, go along for a couple of years and buy another horse. I had a horse years ago. Are you a horse person at all, being from England?
My daughter is very keen on riding and rides a lot, but I'm not sure federally subsidized horses are quite the thing.
Well, what does she ride, by the way? What style?
English.
Yes, I was English pleasure, and I had when I got here, I bought a horse and a quarter horse, and they have a very slow kind of junky little trot. Well, I was trained in proper posting and all this stuff, so I picked up the pace of her trot and did that. But
did you see any of the rodeo?
I didn't. I get a kick out of the rodeo. I don't do that kind of thing. I don't do that
You're
stuff.
not into barrel racing?
Oh, Lord, no. I'd be scared to death I'd fall off.
I think it's one of the most fun things I've seen since I came to America, barrel racing at the in Jackson.
Well, there's a good thing. There's one called, what is it? I forget what Kirk Fordyce used to do, where the cowboy takes the horse and cuts out, cutting horse. They cut out an animal. And you Just sit there. You just hang on for dear life, and you let the horse do its thing. You don't try to tell the horse what to do, other than just where to go, what direction. Then you sit there for that. That's a fascinating thing. And then the other thing is that I saw a few years ago, there was a few weekends of stuff. Anyway, it was in Europe, and American reining horses. Now, I know what a reining horse was. Well, it's usually quarter horses, and they'll come along and they stop real fast and spray dirt. Well, the Europeans were so intrigued they were buying quarter horses like crazy. Oh, well. But anyway, so we need things like that. And we need for Mississippi. By the way, I always thought that the horse business is very kind of sheltered. You don't hear about it. It's not. It's very big in Mississippi, but you don't know about it. We need to do things like that it's known about. So tell me, though, how does this help you? That we're getting a better economy going here. How does this help you with the organization?
I mean, I think it's a case that we're seeing growth in Mississippi because we've had pro-growth policies. We've started to see tax cuts, elimination of the income tax, flat taxes. We're starting to see deregulation. We're starting to see the deregulation of the labor market a few years ago have an effect. And all of this means you've got a great workforce, you've got a flexible workforce, you've got lots of inward investment coming in, you've got low tax environment. And all of this is beginning to create real growth. I think the governor, if he was here, would be quick to point out that on his watch, we've had something like $40 billion worth of inward investment. So for a state like Mississippi, that's a lot of money. It's pouring in.
Yes, good.
And
it's
creating a lot of growth. I think it's a great time to be in Mississippi. Historically, Mississippi has kind of exported cotton and exported people. I think that's actually a completely out-of-date narrative. Actually, I think Mississippi is now, although the official data doesn't yet show it, I think Mississippi is now a net importer of people.
I hope so.
And there's growth. I mean, whether you go to Oxford or you go down to the coast or you go to Starkville, you drive around Mississippi, it's humming with energy.
And so is Hattiesburg, by the way. In between a lot of that. Oh, I'm glad to hear that some of that they're all doing well. That's what we want to know. Yeah. Tell me about deregulation. I'll tell you an instance. This was a few years ago. It was during the first term of Mr. Trump. A little man came up to me one day, just started talking to me about things are really popping in Jackson. Business is good. And he had a business where he had free newspapers and stuff to put out. And his wife and daughter each had their own businesses doing the same thing. And I said, what's so good? He said, we're deregulated. We can be much more free and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, when did that happen? Well, I think this was in 2019. So he got elected in 2016. But I said, does it happen? Shortly after the inauguration? He said, well, yes, it did. So we see what's happening. Yeah. That kind of stuff. But what do you mean by when you talk about deregulation? What do you mean specifically that we're doing here?
In Mississippi, it means getting rid of all those boards and commissions that you need to get a permit from to do anything. There's something called, it's a real technical term, occupational licensing, and that basically meant that to do a certain occupation, you needed a permit. Now, I get it. If you're a pilot, you need a permit. If you're a brain surgeon, you need some kind of certification. But there's an awful lot of jobs where, I think
hairdressing, or even cosmetics, filing your nails,
maybe even teaching. I know some of the best teachers for my family have been people who aren't formally qualified as teachers. So I think you can make it easier for people to get approval to do certain functions. And this is a bill that was passed by the governor 3-4 years ago, and it's starting to have an effect. It basically allows people to get certification much more easily.
Well, that sort of bounces us off on something that we recently did on workforce training. That's instead of that you can do it at community colleges. You don't have to take academics if you don't want to know about social studies and history and stuff like that, but you really want to be a welder. You would do that part. Now you can just go to school, become a welder, and get certified. You don't get a degree, but you get certified. It doesn't matter. Or forklifting, things like that.
You can do the job. That's what counts.
All you have to do is go to somebody and say, I'm ready to do the job. I just need to know what papers do I sign and where's your HR department, stuff like that.
Here's a fun fact, and I like citing this because it annoys people back in the old country. But Mississippi and Alabama this year will make more cars than the whole of the UK.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
The reason for this is because the highly regulated labor markets in the northeast of America deindustrializing, and the jobs and the factories and the car manufacturing, they're moving south. So we can see in real time how deregulating the labor market actually strengthens growth.
Well, the big thing is they don't need unions down south.
Yeah.
Southerners are not into unions, and the UAW tries to get into Nissan. They've tried more times than ever. And I remember talking with a young guy who was at a restaurant, grocery store, getting some breakfast one morning, one of their times. He had a company shirt on. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, are you for the union?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, to make things better." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, how much is that going to cost you?" Yeah. And he said, "Oh, maybe $10 a week." And I'm thinking, okay, that's $40 a month. And then, do a little math there. And the guy's going to lose money. Yep. And then I said, and then the point was you'd have to get 2 raises to get to above where you are now.
And the unionized workforces are the ones where they don't make cars anymore.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking at casinos and stuff like this. So anyway, I said, "Well, do you know what those union people do with your money?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "I'm from Detroit. They live nicely. They travel. They have big houses. They have big cars, all this kind of stuff. That's what they're doing with your money." So I said, "You ought to kind of look on the other side of things." And I remember also at that time, somebody on TV had interviewed a guy who said, "Look, I make $27 an hour. This is years ago. I make $27 an hour, and I have a direct line to my boss. Why would I want to interfere with that?" Yeah. And so, down here, that's what we do. I think parts of the Volkswagen plant in Alabama, there's some part of it has got a union, but I mean it's.
But overall, if you look,
it's nothing. But that's great though.
The reason why the South is doing so well, and companies are leaving California and Ohio and elsewhere and moving south, is because we've got a flexible labor force and low taxes. It's almost as if it's living proof that the conservative idea of low taxes and less regulation work.
And since we're training people more, through the workforce business, I think it used to be called, what it used to be called, Lance? Voc Ed. It was Voc.
It was called Voc. Yeah, it was
vocational education.
Voctech.
Yeah, that's it.
Vocational technologies.
Yeah. But now you can get into all that kind of stuff.
Well, it was all in schools for the longest time, and then they removed it and moved it into central locations. Then you had a real lack of attendance because a lot of these kids are not, they don't want to drive somewhere. So over time, I believe that, moving it away from the school-centered experience into a bigger environment, where people have to come to it. I think we're seeing, and Doug can probably tell you, seeing some of that coming back to schools, which gets it into the kids like 12, 13, earlier, where they're going, "Oh, this is an opportunity," rather than a last chance. So
it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I think past 5 years have been good. The next 5 years, I think, are going to be even better.
We'll be back and talk about that on Mary Wieden You. This is Douglas Carswell, MCPP, Mississippi Center for Public Policy. We'll be right back. If you see it as MCPP, you'll know what that means. We'll be right back after our break. Play an air piano airboard in there.
Oh, I love this song, and I love the original video. It's the best of all time.
Some people say that MTV Video was created because of Channel 16 years ago. It was a long time ago. Bob Pittman lived in somewhere south of here, and Channel 16 did... let's see, what was the song? It was the woman with the bridge, falling off the bridge or something.
The Bobby Gentry.
Bobby Gentry, and they put it to pictures. And they used it just like as a filler on Channel 16. And supposedly that's how it started. Anyway, welcome back. Douglas Carswell here. So we were talking about, you had an interesting proposition here. We're starting to talk about economy and seeing that's a good thing that we're not losing brains. I mean, we hope settling the brain drain.
There's still too many young people in Mississippi who want to move to Nashville and Austin. But the good news is that because of the growth that's happening here, I think a lot of those people are then, after their early 20s, coming back here. And I think the data starts to show, if you look at things like electricity consumption, I think Mississippi's clearly gaining people, and they're coming from somewhere. So I think Mississippi's more attractive to people born in Mississippi, but it's also attractive to outsiders like me. I like to think I started a trend by moving here 5 years ago. But I think on a serious note, there are a lot of people actually now moving from out of Mississippi to make a home here.
And we see a lot of, by the way, the supervisor was talking about this the other day, there's going to be some new housing developments inside Hinds County limits. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of growth and development in Madison County and in Rankin County. You got a lot in Brandon, you got a lot out by the reservoir. And people say, where are these people coming from? I don't know.
Well, if you fly over coming into land at the airport, you see so many developments right across the Jackson metro area, and it's great. It's wonderful.
Like to
so
see
good.
that.
Given that the city lost 40% of its population not so long ago, it's a good problem to have.
Yes, well, there's some place there. I think a lot of it's new people too.
Yeah.
Like some of these companies they're coming in, they're new people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so folks, if you'd like to call us up, we're at 888-808-8637, as we always are. If you would like to text us, we're at 601-879-4395, and you can watch us supertalk.fm/Mary, and we're also going to be on YouTube later on, not long after the show, and it's
not 30 minutes.
You look up Mary Wieden You, and there's Wieden, W-I-E, I before E, except after C. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. First of all, I'll have it done within 30 minutes. I usually try to get that as quickly as possible. And two, I have a question for Douglas regarding American football. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they've been playing some games over in England and Ireland and places like that. Is the sport getting any kind of traction, or my curiosity?
They always try to get British people interested in American football, and as a Brit who had no interest in American football until 5 years ago, and now I'm passionate about it. I watch prep play every Friday evening. I watch Ole Miss or State playing. I'm trying to become a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, although they're not helping. I'm really into American football. And the eureka moment for me, and I'm sorry, Brits need to have this explained to them like they're a bit dumb, because it took me a while to figure it out. Once you understand the 10-yard rule, that you've got 4 goes to try and get 10 yards, then the whole thing makes sense. But until then, I was looking at it and thinking, why do they keep stopping and starting? Why isn't it like rugby? But the moment you understand, if you explain really slowly to a British audience the 10-yard rule, then they'll get it and they'll love it. And I know this for a fact because actually I took an old friend of mine and his daughter from England to go and watch the Ole Miss game last Saturday. And they had never seen an American football game before.
Oh, and you go to Ole Miss. Woo-hoo.
We took them, and we had these amazing seats on the side at field level. And they were absolutely mesmerized by it. So explain the 10-yard rule to Brits really slowly, and they will come to love it.
And the spirit at Ole Miss, I've never been to a state game, but I've been to Ole Miss, and it's infectious. And if you can't catch it, there's something wrong with you. I think it's just wonderful.
And it's the whole thing. It's the band and the enthusiasm and the
people and
the people. And even there was a bit of rivalry between the Louisiana fans and
is there a bit of a rivalry?
But even that, I mean, people kept on saying to me, yeah, the fans sometimes get a bit rowdy, you know. Compared to British soccer fans, these people were perfect gentlemen. All of them were perfect gentlemen. Even when a couple of young lads from the fraternity got a bit out of hand, they were charming by comparison to British soccer fans.
LSU and Ole Miss are like this. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's just
we haven't gotten to the point of soccer hooligans yet.
Exactly. Their idea of bad behavior is to
socking somebody.
Yeah, they're gentlemen by comparison to.
Well, they have an awful lot of clothing on, don't they? Yeah. With the pads and something, but they have to because they'd be willing to kill each other.
But it's football is one of the great discoveries. I'm basically trying to catch up for 50 years of not watching football, and so I try and watch as many games as I can.
Well, on Friday nights, Lance does a show here. We're carrying a Hartfield games, and they do an hour and a half or something of high school football, all around the state.
I'm not going to say how did that go.
Well, but here's the funny thing, though. There were some weirdo things. I caught some of it. That was the first time. Caught some of it Friday night, and there was this. How many overtimes? The game,
1 point game.
The game ended. It was 0-0, and the game ended, so they had to go to overtime.
No they had to go to overtime. I think it was 6 or 5.
They had to have a score.
A 0-0 game.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah, it was between Moss Point and I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Choctaw County, but I have to remember the other. It was a county school, and one of our listeners, Lanny Mixon, kept us up to date as the game goes on.
That's almost unheard of.
Yeah, and he got to the end. He goes, "We actually have to go to overtime in the worst game I've ever watched of football,
Isn't that crazy?
and get more of this." But
but one of the things I love about football is that the game can turn on a dime. It really can.
Yes.
You take your eye off the ball, an interception, something like that, and the whole dynamic changes.
I'll have to tell you about the one famous football, and then we'll move on. But I have to tell you about this one really extraordinary thing that happened. It was the State Ole Miss game. It was the Egg Bowl, and it was here in town. And I was there with Bert, and it was a very windy day. And the game was about to end, and State was going to kick a field goal, and that was going to end it. And then they were going to win. And so he said, well, let's start walking out and we'll watch the play. So we're going down, the steps, and the goal was here. And so the ball went up, and it was a very windy day. And the wind moved the ball back.
Veterans Memorial Stadium.
It actually happened, and Ole Miss won the game.
It's called the Immaculate Deflection. God showed up. Being an Ole Miss guy, I've got 2 degrees from there, played baseball at Ole Miss. As a child, it was my first Ole Miss game to go to. Some friends
You went there?
Oh, yeah, I was at the game.
Oh.
Some friends of my mother and father's gave us tickets, so my mom and I went with the husband and wife, and we were in the end zone in the U of Veterans Memorial. It had not been constructed that long, so we were in the far end zone watching that, and it was my first time to ever be at an Ole Miss game.
And you remember it.
And like it was yesterday. Like it was yesterday. And you see this field goal go up, and Mississippi State wins it, obviously. So, I didn't care.
Right, yeah.
I didn't care, but as the ball just hovered and it was like a spaceship floating in the air, and then the wind just pushes it aside. And everybody goes crazy that has these flags and drinks and everything. And I'm like, I'm so young, I'm figuring out what's happening. And I'm like, these Ole Miss fans know how to have a fun time here. So I became kind of an Ole Miss fan because of that game. It's funny, the things that stick with you.
That is funny that you remember it.
Well, we don't have deregulation in football, but anyway, we started to talk about deregulation. Well, during the previous break, a little bit. You want to talk about deregulation, and I was telling you about the little man whose company did so well when it was deregulated. So, what are we deregulating that's helpful here in Mississippi?
Well, I think the next thing we need to deregulate is the education system. Sorry to go on about my favorite thing, but
yes,
if you have a child and they go to school, why are you forced to send them to a school based on your zip code? So let's deregulate it. Let's allow families to control their share of the tax dollars, about $7,000 each.
Well, I think, and I said this to you, and I felt this way all along about charter schools. You're big on charter schools.
Yep.
Why can't every school be a charter school?
Yep.
Why can't every school have quality teachers,
Absolutely.
quality teaching? You don't have to have the prettiest building in town, but you just have to have the necessary equipment. It's learning is not being in a pretty building. Why can't the whole thing be chartered and you go where you want to go? You're right.
And another thing where we could deregulate big time is healthcare. One of the reasons why costs are so high in Mississippi is because you've got these very stringent regulations limiting the ability of people to set up new healthcare providers. So, if we deregulated the healthcare system and the education system, that really would be great news.
I heard a story. I was amazed at this. It was about somebody who had COVID and had to get a medication for it. And you think, oh, well, get some pills. Well, went through whatever you go through to get the initial COVID stuff and had to get Paxlovid. $800 for a pill?
Wow.
That is wrong. That's crazy. You go to some other country and it'd be 10 cents or 50 cents, something like that. Now that has to be is terrible.
Yeah, there's a real problem, and I think one of the problems, and I have to say I think Trump is beginning to grasp the nettle. Part of the problem is that the American patients, the consumers, are used by pharmaceutical companies to basically foot the bill for a lot of the R&D. And the rest of the world gets a good deal because drugs come along, they're tried out in America, they're developed in America, the costs are borne by Americans, and then other countries get the benefit of that. And I think that's wrong. And another problem is with insurance. If you've got a tension between the provider and the insurance, you have an incentive to inflate the costs if they know the insurance company is going to pick up the tab. But of course, it's no such thing as the insurance company picking up the tab because you, the customer, have to pay through high premiums.
Yes, and a lot of people are told by insurance companies, well, no, your policy won't let you get your teeth cleaned or something like that. Or, your policy won't let you get, cataract surgery or whatever you have to have. No, your company won't let you do that. Well, who's running things around there? Doctors or the insurance industry? And I don't know enough about it because it annoys me. So I don't want to know more than I already know, but it annoys me to no end that somebody at an insurance company is deciding what not me particularly, but I in general am going to get or not get. If I'm paying for it and it's my body and it's my health, I want it.
Well, years ago, the UK really did an in-depth study on benzodiazepines such as Valium and Xanax, and they saw that there was a massive overprescription and that basically their population was over-medicated. They started backing down on that, and in this country it seems that we've gone the other way. Are you seeing that, the impact of maybe overprescribing, as you mentioned there, and that it makes a lot of money?
Yep.
But is it healthy for what we're doing?
You get everyone with a vested interest in prescribing medication when sometimes actually I'm not sure you should be prescribing medication. And I mean, clearly in America, you have a healthcare system that I think is much better at providing medical care than back in the UK. If ever you hear people talking about why don't we have Medicaid, why don't we have Canada-type healthcare that's free for everyone, look at the UK system. It's a really, really bad idea. You've got a better system in America. But I do think there is a tendency for overprescribing, particularly things like Valium. Young kids you hear about that perhaps are a little bit, have a few behavioral problems, rather than treating it as just a slightly naughty child or a naughty boy or a adolescent teenager who's learning how to behave. We treat it as a medical problem, and I think that's sometimes wrong.
I agree with you. You don't stick them on Ritalin or whatever those things are from the beginning, because kids. I think there are a lot of problems. Are kids grew up with that stuff, and their minds are wrecked with all this. Their stuff. Their minds are just destroyed by it, and they don't know what they are or what they need to be. Or whatever.
I think there's a tendency to give a medical diagnosis to something that is just a passing behavioral problem.
Sure. I agree with that, too. By the way, we were talking about classrooms. Here's one of our listeners. Bring discipline back to the classroom is what he's talking about. Well, just in time for us to take a break. I'll come back for a final segment with Douglas Carswell. Take these things in and out. It's earphones, folks. I'm not picking at my ears. I've never gotten extenders for that. And Douglas Carswell is here. We had a little discussion about football again during the break. It's Dak Prescott is the quarterback at Dallas, and that's why a lot of us like Dallas, because Dak Prescott went to Mississippi State, and he's a very good guy. My attitude always was, if you don't like or even love, if you don't love Dak Prescott, there's something wrong with you, because he's a good guy. And then, when the Manning brothers were quarterbacks, and those were the good teams. Jackson Dart, you said he plays for New York?
I think he plays for a New York team now, doesn't he?
The Giants. Oh, okay. He is now the starting quarterback for the New York Giants.
Well, who else from Mississippi?
Oh, there's tons of them all over the league. Well, you had Eli was the...
Eli Manning was...
Yeah, well, he and his brother have a new show. Well, he and his brother, Peyton, have a new show on Hulu. They're executive producers of a show called Chad Powers. Chad Powers is a guy that Eli Manning created, and he would go to training camps at colleges dressed like not him, in disguise, and he'd start throwing balls out there as like a walk-on, and these dudes are like, who is this guy? Well, they created a show. It's really funny, called Chad Powers, and it's on Hulu. So if you're looking for something comedic that's funny and clean, family friendly,
well, just listen to this
excellent
show. That's all you need, because we're about to be back and taking some notices here from listeners. My dad didn't need to give us medication to correct behavior problems, as we were talking about just before we went to break. All over medication, particularly of kids, because their brains are scrambled by the time they get to 18, 21 years old. Absolutely scrambled education. Let's see, where were we before that? We got to do, well, it was education, and I say why can't we have all charter schools? Why can't we have those, whatever rules and ways of doing business? Why can't we have that? If we're doing away with the Department of Education, there's a big deregulation thing there. Why can't we? Could we do that in Mississippi?
Absolutely. And the kind of schools that we would get would be decided by the parents. It could be that you want schools that are big on discipline. It could be you want schools that are slightly more relaxed. If you give people school choice, they will find the school that suits their child. I mean, I know kids that do well in different environments. Some kids need discipline, some kids don't. Find a school that suits each different child. It's what's happening now in the neighboring states. They've all got school choice.
And you got to find out. You got to find people. Parents need to care. I mean, they're the good ones who care so much that they go to all the meetings and stuff like this. But too many parents are like, let somebody else do it. Da. So you've got to really make a big effort to get parents involved.
Yeah, and
if you're going to do it.
That's one of the really interesting things about what's happening in Arkansas now, because parents have to make a conscious choice to buy into a school.
They do have that.
You're getting that. You're getting that. People are just not passively saying, right, okay, I'm in this zip code, I'll send my kid to that school. They're making a conscious choice, and that is affecting the relationship in a positive way between the family and the school. It's great.
Are they practically all charters now in Arkansas?
No, in New Orleans, yes. In Arkansas, no. But in Arkansas, of course, every family, if you've got a child in Arkansas, you get $7,000 for that child paid into a bank account, and you can then allocate that money from that bank account to any school of your choice.
Oh,
And
that's good.
it's it's working wonders. There was a report just out yesterday showing that actually it's starting to drive up standards and have all kinds of really positive benefits. Patrick Wolf, a great academic at the University of Arkansas, has done a lot of research on it. It really is. It's transforming education in Arkansas.
Did that come with Sarah Sanders?
Absolutely.
Oh, pretty sharp.
True Trump Republican. Absolutely, 100% for school choice.
I wish that the Relaxium people would take the daddy stuff off of there. You know, her dad. What's his name?
Talking about former governor.
Yeah,
Mike
former
Huckabee.
governor Mike Huckabee. Yeah, Mike
Yeah.
Huckabee. You know, those ads need to go. He's for God's sakes, he's the ambassador to Israel.
Yeah.
And this is by the way, you know, you think about today is the 2-year anniversary of the bloodiest thing any of us will ever see in our lives.
1,200 killed, yeah.
Yes, and Israel was brutally attacked. That's brutally is not even a word that nearly gets to it. But the world wants to see it the Hamas way. And that just burns me up.
I'm still stunned, not so much by the atrocity, but the fact is before the bodies were even recovered, there were people on the streets of New York and London and Paris celebrating, and we still haven't addressed this deep malaise in American and European academia and the liberal left. I don't want to share a country with people who side with Hamas.
And so many of them do.
Yeah.
So many of them do. And but that brings us back to what we were going to talk about initially was Charlie Kirk. Similar things happened right after he was brutally assassinated for
only
God's
a few
sakes.
weeks ago. Only a few weeks ago, and it's to me it's still shocking. I'm still shocked to think that someone that was so familiar, such a familiar face that I would listen to all the time, has been murdered like that. And we mustn't forget it and move on to the next thing. I mean, this is really, really shocking. And he was doing a very good and noble thing. He was going to meet with young minds across America on campus and to engage with people who disagreed with him and to take the time to civically try and listen to them and understand why they thought differently and to engage with them. I mean, that is probably the most noble thing you can do, and he was murdered for it. And we mustn't just let this pass.
No, it won't. That organization will not. And you're doing something with you've got an academy.
Yeah.
And it's looking to future leaders, and that's what Charlie Kirk was doing, future leaders of this country.
We're nothing like the scale of Turning Point US, but in our small, modest way, what we try and do is take a cohort of young Mississippians, and our next session is this Saturday. So if anyone's listening and you think you want to come along, reach out to me, get in touch with me, email me.
How do they do it?
Go to our website and log in under the Leadership Academy, or email me at carswell@mspolicy.org. That's carswell@mspolicy.org. Get in touch with the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. We take a cohort of young people and we spend the day talking to them about some of the fundamental issues about our state. We get state leaders to come along and discuss with them. We had Chad White last week. We've had Lynn Fitch before. We have state leaders come along and talk about how legislation is made, how to drive the change that Mississippi needs. And we also have media training to give them insights into how to campaign, how to engage in a positive way, how to disagree agreeably. And I think it gives them the understanding about civic life in America that is sometimes so lacking.
Are these high schoolers?
Mainly high schoolers, yeah. We started off the program actually intending it to be for university undergraduates, but we had so many 16, 17, 18-year-olds from local high schools saying, could they come along? We actually now make it largely for high schoolers.
Well, good. I don't think they get any kind of civic education in high school at all. So this is like, what is this? You know,
and anyone who takes part, you get a certificate. It adds to volunteer hours or whatever it is. And also, last year, about a third of the participants went on to internal work for state leaders.
See, that's
so
perfect.
It's a great way of learning about the political process and engaging. And of course, we're conservative as an organization, but we welcome people who aren't. I'm proud to say we've actually had one of our students was a volunteer for Kamala Harris, and we welcome that.
Good.
We want that.
Absolutely, because we're all one. We're all one thing. And you all are not. You're not off the wall conservative folks. If you don't know about this organization, they're not. It's
what's I think really important is that young Americans learn to understand some of the elemental principles behind the American Republic. And yes, you can disagree about politics, but if you all buy into the idea of American exceptionism, the founding principles, the morality of the free market, if you do all that, you can disagree and still be fellow citizens. And that's what we've got to rediscover.
And isn't it a shame that people in Illinois, and conversely, it wrecks the whole country because these people are reaching out all over the media, being told, oh, democracy's dead with all this, stuff like this going on. That is terrible. That's a terrible thing to say. It's a terrible thing for people, for kids. Kids, these are their leaders saying this.
Take it from me as a foreigner. Next year, it's your 250th birthday. America has been going for 250 years. I think you've been a phenomenal success.
Yes.
An absolutely stunning success. You think of yourselves as a young country. Your constitution is the largest, for a large country, the oldest constitution in existence.
Really?
All the others, the French had their revolution about the same time you guys did. They're on their fifth republic. Many European countries have had numerous constitutions that didn't last a generation or more. America has got a constitution that works, and you've gone from being 13 ramshackle British colonies to being the most successful republic in human history. Take pride in it. Of course, not everything's perfect. Of course, you've sometimes taken a wrong turn and you produce bad leaders. Who hasn't? But the worst American leaders in 250 years pale into comparison compared to the worst German leaders or Russian leaders or French leaders. So I think America should actually celebrate your 250th birthday.
Well said.
Take pride in America, and most important, teach young people to be proud of their country. Don't let the progressive professors to infect their mind with a woke mind virus. Make sure that young people grow up and understand. Yeah, as an outsider, I can see. I marvel. Literally every morning I wake up and think, thank goodness I'm here. And I wish more Americans had that sense of, wow, America is something special.
Yeah, we do. We take it for granted. Like, well, yeah, I guess I'm lucky. I don't know, because they're not taught enough about other countries. People don't know.
And people are taught by progressive professors to always think the worst about America.
Mm-hmm. And they're getting it bombarded daily now.
Yeah.
TV is just, it's a wreck.
Yeah.
TV news is a wreck, and that's all it is. You're right, bombarding it with garbage.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Douglas Carswell, we got to go now.
Wonderful.
So listen, have a wonderful time. Oh, you think it's going to, is that enough? Huh? No. So it's this coming Saturday if kids want to get involved. One more time for the website.
Mississippi Center for Public Policy. You can email me at carswell@mspolicy.org or have a look at our website, mspolicy.org. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to come along this Saturday, you would be very welcome. Oh, and there's a free lunch.
Well, what time and where?
It'll be 10 o'clock in downtown Jackson, 10 till 3. And, we would love to see you.
Do you know where it's going to be?
Our office in George Street.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right, everybody. Have a good one. See you on Friday. Thank you, Douglas.